We don't want a Jamaica where the government or employers dictates the medical treatment that a person takes.
What were the objectives that you were trying to achieve from the protests across the island?
Well, the UIC is not anti-vax or pro-vax. We're pro-choice. And so we're leading a protest action across the nation to really sensitize Jamaicans to the need to stand up and to fight for their rights as individuals, to make the choice, especially about their bodily autonomy. We don't want a Jamaica where the government or employers dictates the medical treatment that a person takes. When it comes on to your body and when it comes on to medicine, it's a personal decision. So we want to encourage all Jamaicans to be aware of this and to make sure they stand up for their right to choose for themselves what goes into their bodies. And it must be an informed consent choice. It must be because they understand what it is, why they need to take it, and then to take it. We were also against the government's approach. It was a very dictatorial approach, a draconian approach, which we would prefer a more objective approach, a more inclusive, a more transparent approach, a more sensitive approach. For example, to lock down people who live hand to mouth is really unreasonable. To lock down a nation which doesn't have a very high density of digitization, where people get their monies into their accounts and can do online banking and online shopping. We weren't there yet. And so for the government to treat us as if we're a first world country where everybody is relatively well off and can transact business online easily and get delivery of foods and services easily, spoke to a level of insensitivity by the government that we just couldn't countenance. We couldn't allow that to continue without somebody speaking up on behalf of those people who are suffering. We saw where the Prime Minister joked about the person who buy the half of bread and the big jar of oil and with disdain speak about their situation as though they're lesser than. No, these people were made so by 77 years of failed politics and failed economics. And so now to turn around and suggest that they are Jamaica's problem, I found that unconscionable and unbearable to tolerate. And so I led the Walks for Liberty and the March on Gordon House for those people, for their voices to be heard, and for Jamaicans around the world to know the plight of Jamaicans here and how their own government appears to have become their enemy.
But there is the belief that the government is in a rock and a hard place and that there needs to be these lockdowns to curb COVID-19 cases. Are you opposed to lockdowns, and were you also opposed to the recent decision by the government to reopen the entertainment industry?
No, what we're opposed to is the approach. So for example, the government has taken a unilateral dictatorial kind of position. What we preferred and what we proposed very early in the day is to have a public emergency council that draws on the leadership of all of the registered political parties to ensure we have the best and brightest minds in terms of science and medicine around the table. And then we have not a politically led initiative, not a partisan led initiative, but a people led initiative where the people understand the issue, understand the various solutions, and we could apply them. Instead, what we got is a salesman government focused on a single solution and ramming that down the people, as opposed to looking at early treatments. For example, the use of ivermectin very early in the process, so that the more than 1,600 persons who died and suffered may have been spared all of that by a government that was more aware, a process that was more objective, that could look at all the different options and bring them to bear to reduce suffering. Now, lockdowns would not have been necessary, because when you focus on public education and public support, then people understand and can trust the government and behave in an appropriate manner, as opposed to just starting from a position of people cannot be trusted, people cannot be relied upon to be responsible. And so you treat everybody like a criminal, as opposed to treating everybody like decent citizens who are worthy of being listened to, heard, and respected. The UIC believes in respecting Jamaicans, and over the years, the two major parties have not treated Jamaicans in a way that suggests that they believe in the Jamaican people, that they trust the Jamaican people, or that they respect the Jamaican people. We believe it's time for the people to be respected.
But we see we're in the hospitalization rate, over 90% of persons who are hospitalized are unvaccinated. Based on that fact, would the UIC come out in favor and encourage its membership to take the vaccine?
Absolutely not. In fact, that's a fake statistics. When you say 95% of the persons in hospitals are unvaccinated, that's a misleading statement because at the time when that statistics was provided, only about 5 to 10% of Jamaica was vaccinated. So people in hospitals, by nature, by design, by the numbers, are going to be more people who are not vaccinated. It's not like we had a case where we had 80% or 50% of the nation vaccinated and then a large proportion turned about the hospital otherwise. So that's a fake statistics, and this is the kind of thing that makes the government less trustworthy when they put forward all kind of fake or misinformation, things designed to create fear mongering. We need to stop that. We need to have a more transparent and objective way of dealing with each other that doesn't try to scare people or bribe people or force people or coerce people into taking something they may not want to take.
And what if doctors are suggesting that it's really by taking a vaccine that Jamaica can achieve normalcy? Would the UIC then be opposed to encouraging vaccination?
No, we would not be opposed to encouraging people to make choices that are best for themselves. We want them to have the information to then make the choice that they think is best for themselves. We're opposed to the dictates. That's what we're opposed to. So we're not saying we prefer one product or the other. We're saying let's have a free market of ideas, a free market of product, and a free market of choices.
You would have shared that your party decided to boycott the general election because of COVID-19 concerns last year.
Yes.
Next year, local government elections are constitutionally due. Do you plan to field candidates during that election?
Yes, we plan to field 220 candidates in the local government election and 63 in the next general. We anticipate the early general election. This government is failing. You saw where the opposition is falling apart, and now the government is beginning to fall apart. They're now having infightings about who said what, when, and where, and what they're doing. So clearly, they're losing a grip on it, and they're losing it because they're failing miserable. They have not managed this pandemic very well. They have hurt the Jamaican people. They have heaped disdain on the Jamaican people. They have shown a disregard for the interest of the Jamaican people. And so the Jamaican people are now ready to reject both PNP and GLP and to embrace a new form of governance, one that no longer divides them, but brings them together to create good governance that actually works for them and stops simply tricking them and spending 5 years wasting their time and their money.
It would have been published today that you intend to carry the government to court for the constitutionality of the Disaster Risk Management Act. Are you now proposing, or does this step indicate that the UIC is intending to tackle the existing government through the legal system?
We'll continue to tackle them on every front, but yes, we are currently tackling them on the constitutionality of the DRMA and the Public Order Act, both of which are unconstitutional. The Public Order Act is an outdated act that was before our constitutional rights were enshrined in the Charter, and the DRMA was the Prime Minister's way of getting around having a proper public emergency process that would ensure accountability and that would ensure that other parties can be a part of the process. So the UIC recognizes this and will now seek to prove through the courts that the government was wrong and therefore bring redress to all the Jamaican people who have been made to suffer and even die because of the government's wrong approach to the pandemic.